Hey everyone, it's Justine and welcome to the 12 Days of Christmas, Day 2, 2017. Today's video is sponsored by Catherine Pooler and I'm going to be using products from the Candy Cane Lane Stamp of Approval collection that are finally available for individual purchase. Please be sure to stick around to the end of the video because there is a really generous giveaway from Catherine and I will explain more later. So I'm getting started by inking up my Peppermint Stick background stamp from Catherine Pooler. Now the thing about Catherine's inks is they usually just need a quick tap and that's all you need. But because I just finished re-inking, I was a little unsure, so I made sure I inked it up a lot. I put down a piece of computer paper over top of my card layer while I was stamping so that I would get a nice even impression without getting the ink all over my fingers. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp this background 3 times. And the reason why is because I'm going to be using various elements from these to create my 3 cards today. I'm going to also have a lot of leftover pieces that I could use for other cards. I'm going to go ahead and die cut one of the backgrounds using 2 stitched rectangle dies. I'm going to also use the Merry Labels die to die cut this frame. So once I finish doing my 2 die cutting techniques there, I am going to end up with all of these different pieces as well as one full background. So to get started on my very first card, I've already prepped my backgrounds and I am going to fold a card base that measures 11 by 4 1/4 and is scored at 5.5 inches. And I'm going to go ahead and cut one of these backgrounds here to about 1.5 inches so that it slips underneath my card and creates a really nice border. I'm going to do some stamping from this Candy Cane Lane stamp set and die bundle. I'm going to be using this small bow and I'm going to be using a sentiment as well. Please ignore those 2 candy canes there. I was using that for a different card that didn't turn out. So I'm going to be stamping this small little bow and die cutting it, and then also the sweetest holiday wishes for my sentiment. I'm going to go ahead and die cut that and trim that sentiment out. Now that I have this ready, I'm going to use the Hip Holiday stamp set, and I'm going to be using this really cool moose pattern here. And you can see that this stamp set contains lots of pieces to recreate really cool Christmas trees that are really funky and wonky looking. It's another one of my really great favorite stamp sets. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stamp this moose, stag, reindeer, whichever you want to call him, and I'm going to stamp that in the Midnight ink. Now you'll notice that I had a couple of little splotches here, and that has nothing to do with the ink itself. Catherine's inks are seriously the best for stamping solid stamps, but I think I had some residue from the baby wipes, which is why I actually stopped using baby wipes to clean off my stamps. So I just filled it in with a black pen. I then went ahead and I added a little handkerchief for the moose, and I added that on top. I'm really thankful that I used this Tombow Mono liquid adhesive because I ended up taking it off. So I'm going to go ahead and add that bow as well as the sentiment into the bottom right hand corner of my card panel. Now my card panel, because I'm going to have a piece sticking out, measures 3 3/4 by 5 1/4, and so it's a little bit smaller than I usually do. And that's because I wanted to have this peppermint stick background sticking out from the side. So I added that on top of my card base along with the card layer. And of course, you could make the peppermint stick show up as much as you want. Just cut the layer down a little bit more. Once that was finished, I just simply added these 2 birds onto the top of the antlers. I thought that looked really cute and just added a little extra touch to the stamp. Then lastly, I arranged a lot of the various small elements from the Hip Holiday stamp, which is where this moose stag came from. And I went ahead and I put them onto this very small block. It's a nice grid block that Catherine Pooler just came out with a couple months ago. And I have all 3 of the blocks. They're fantastic. And because Catherine's ink stamps so well on solid, I don't actually need a stamping tool when I'm using her inks. So I do like to use blocks. I even stamped and added a little bit onto the inside of the card so that it would match. And then I wanted to add a sentiment into the inside of the card as well, so I stamped this Merry Christmas, which also comes from the Hip Holiday stamp. Now this Christmas series, I really wanted to focus and add a little bit more extra detail, so I'm going to be showing the insides of my cards as well as the envelopes for each of the videos. Lastly, I wanted to add some final embellishment, so I grabbed some Nuvo drops in Ivory Seashell, and then I also added some green onto the card as well. That was a last minute addition. I just really thought that it needed one more color, and I'm really happy I added it. So that's the end of the first card. Let's move on to the second one. For my second card, I'm going to go ahead and take that Merry Labels die that I had die cut at the beginning of the video, and I'm going to take this frame and glue it onto my card. I also went ahead and die cut it in white so that I could keep everything on one layer. But of course, you are more than welcome to stamp onto the card base directly and have this frame a little bit higher up. It wouldn't affect your stamping at all. So I went ahead and I arranged a bunch of these stamps here, and these are from the Merry and Bright Boughs stamp, and I'm going to take all three of these really big sentiments here, and I'm going to attach them onto my card so that it says Joyful, Merry, Bright. And I picked them up using my Catherine Pooler block, and this is the largest size that she has. Here you can check out the stamp set and see all of those elegant bows that she has that you can stamp and mix and match. Using the Midnight ink, I'm going to lightly tap on my stamps. This is important because if you push too hard, the black ink does stain, and so it's going to get in the middle there, and it's going to be difficult to stamp in the same spot twice if you accidentally mess up. So make sure you do a very light love tap using Catherine's inks. Only the black, I believe, and the red actually stain when stamping. But I say a stained stamp is a loved stamp. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to be stamping these lovely pine needles here, or these little bristles. I'm so bad with flora and fauna. I always realize that when I do videos, I never know what type of flower or what type of leaf it is. But regardless, you know, the ones you use for Christmas time. And then I'm going to be adding these berries onto the stamp as well. And you can kind of twist and turn it actually, and they match, which is really neat. But I am going to be using small ones instead because I don't want to distract from the sentiments. So I'm just using this bunch of 3 here, and I'm going to show you how those layer on top of each other for the envelope later on. Now using that exact stamp set, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to arrange various stamps here onto my block. And I'm going to be stamping those in the middle of the card. So this is the inside, wishing you a holiday. And then I went ahead and I stamped the word joyful in the Rockin red so that it matched the outside and gave it a little bit of contrast. And to add in a touch of that green using grass skirt, I went ahead and added these 2 leaf style stamps. So once that was all finished up, I grabbed some Nuvo drops and I went over top of the berries using autumn red. And this just gave it a really nice 3D look. For my third and final card, I went ahead and I grabbed a circular block to trace a circle onto my paper. You could also use a glass or you could use a circle die in order to do this. I just used that as my base here because I am going to be stamping these various branches here using the grass skirt ink. And I kind of tried to overlap the top and the bottom of them, and I think it looks really fantastic. So I went ahead as well and just stamped these berries onto each of the places where they meet up so that it also masks any sort of disaster areas, which I don't think there were many. Then I went ahead and stamped the sentiment into the center of the card, and I'm using once again that Merry Boughs stamp set. Merry and Bright Boughs stamp set, my apologies. And I went ahead and I stamped the sentiment just like I did in the middle of the second card in the 2 colors. And I went ahead and I erased that line there just in case there was any pencil to be seen. I folded up my card base, A2 size, and I went ahead and I added another piece of that peppermint stick to the background, which I cut off from this rectangle frame. Just to make it easy, I used a tape runner this time instead of some liquid glue, just because it was that perfect size. Then I went ahead and adhered my card panel here onto the card base next to the peppermint stick background area. So this time I have it poking out on the right side instead of the left like I did on the first card. So once that was all finished, it was time to add some embellishments. So I went again with the autumn red and I went around in a circular motion and finished all the berries. Be careful though that you don't get your hand in them when you're doing the ones on the left side. Now, what seems to always happen with me is that I end up screwing up with the red, and the red is the only Nuvo drop so far that I've used that actually stains the cardstock. However, what you can do is just grab an X-Acto knife and move the Nuvo drops away once they're still wet, and that seemed to do not too bad of a job, nothing where it's noticeable, and that works quite fine. So then I just grabbed a piece of silver glitter paper from my stash, and I just cut a very, very thin 1/8 of an inch panel there, and I put that onto the side to just add a final touch. Now for the inside of the card, I just did a simple sentiment, and I did from our home to yours, and then I added a little bit of color by adding a small bow underneath the from. It just seemed to need something there. So that's the end of the 3 cards, and I wanted to go ahead and show you an envelope that I had made that you could also make for your designs. So now, of course, because we seem to have a color palette of the traditional red, green, and white for Christmas, as well as some black, you could use, of course, red, white, or green envelopes, and I'll link below to some perfect envelopes that would match these inks. Now I'm going to use the white envelope here to show you what you can do to create an envelope that coordinates with your cards and makes it extra special. So I went ahead with a red micron pen, and I went around this Mary die cut here that I had cut out at the beginning of the video that I didn't end up using, and I'll use on another card later. I stamped some of these branches here from the Merry and Bright Boughs stamp set, and I went ahead and I used these coordinating berries to stamp right on top of them, and they're so elegant and beautiful, and I love that frame on it. I used my block here to create some lines in order to address the envelope, and now you have a coordinating envelope for your card. Thank you so much for sticking around until the end of the video. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Catherine Pooler's giveaway today and how you can enter. So a big thank you to Catherine Pooler for donating this amazing prize. We have the Merry and Boughs stamp set, the Hip Holiday stamp set, the Merry Labels dies, 3 inks, Grass Skirt, Rockin' Red, and Midnight, and then finally a large block, one of her new grid blocks, and they're so amazing. Thank you for this amazing prize. If you would like to win, all you have to do is comment on this video, and I have several other ways to win over on my blog, so be sure to head over to my blog and check out more details about these cards. Thanks so much. Wow, you're still here. Thanks for sticking around to the very end of the video. If you missed a video or you need more Christmas card ideas, check out my Christmas playlist where I've all had the past 4 years of Christmas cards there. You can also click on my face there to subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I will see you tomorrow for another video.